So I plan to make this a dedicated tutorial, but I'm working on this ad for this sort of futuristic city, and I have to add these foreground elements to tie them into the background that I've created. So I've got this layer and I want to add it to this edge here, but the problem is that perspective wise there's no way to really line it up nicely with the building. So I could use the lasso tool and come into this sort of edge here, and I could then distort this and match it to sort of line this horizontal up, and then same with the one going into the distance. But the problem is that you end up with this kind of weird warp here, especially with this curved edge, and then it's even worse when you start doing two sides. So instead of that, we're going to use something called the perspective warp. So first I'm going to line this up approximately where I want to use the elements, sort of around about here. I like the idea of these trees being on the top there. It gives it a little bit more integration, but they'll probably get a bit like sort of out of whack. So we come to edit and go perspective warp, and then we just draw a grid on our image here and we line up the edges. So if I go like this, line this up here, and the more accurate you are with the stage, the easier it is to manipulate. So now I create the second face. So I click and drag another grid, and if you drag it close to this edge, it automatically snaps to it. Now we've got sort of one geo essentially that's connected. So I've got our grid, and if I press W, it's going to change us to warp mode. So I'm going to turn down the opacity a little bit, and now I'm actually going to shift click this edge, which will force it to remain constrained, and then I can shift click these two, which will straighten out those. And if I actually shift click that, let's drag this out. And so I'm going to line up this curved edge with the actual sharp edge of the building, and you can shift click on these again to turn off the locking. Right, so now I'm just lining up these. I can see these edges going down here, and I want to line those up. So you can see here that the base of this building is completely out of whack because I didn't draw the grid low enough, but that's fine. I could bring that in later if I wanted. So I do want to bring this building right to the edge of, because I sort of want to replace the whole thing. So be really careful with this stage and take your time, because you want to get these sorts of perspective lines as correct as you can, because the human eye will really notice these sorts of things. So I may have to redo this because I can see up here that I needed a little bit extra in our grid, and it's kind of warping the top. So if I turn that back on and press OK, you can see that like from before to after, it's gone out of whack down here. So I need to extend my grid down the bottom, and I also need to extend it up the top. But if that wasn't being used, like for instance, if we just paint this out, let's say we're keeping that edge and we're just integrating this, like we'll maybe integrate it into the old building, and then let's say if it was only going up a few levels, then that from a distance that's starting to look like it sits in there. It's matching the perspective, so that means that to our eye from far enough away it's believable.